Interrupting that story to take you live now to Sydney, where Treasurer Josh Frydenberg is speaking about making Centennial Park a heritage-listed site. Let's listen in.
To the table as a former ambassador for Australia and as a leading diplomat, someone with a small business background as well, and I know you'll be a wonderful advocate for the people of Wentworth. Well, welcome to the People's Park, as Sir Henry Parkes called it back in 1888. Centennial Park, and it is one of the largest urban parks in the southern hemisphere, nearly 200 hectares large. And it is with great pleasure that today the Morrison government is announcing that Centennial Park will become the 115th place on the National Heritage List, joining the likes of Bondi Beach and Uluru, the MCG and the Sydney Opera House and the Australian War Memorial. Centennial Park has deemed to have outstanding heritage value to the nation. This is because this place was where Australia was born. It was here that our federation was inaugurated, our Constitution was proclaimed, our first Governor-General, Lord Hopetoun, was sworn in, our first Prime Minister, Edmund Barton, was sworn in, and the first Cabinet of Australia was sworn in. More than 60,000 people were here to witness this special occasion. More than 250,000 people lined the streets as a procession made their way up through the Paddington gates. This is truly a historic site, and it's remarkable that it hasn't been listed to date on the National Heritage List. So this is a wonderful occasion for the people of New South Wales. I would also like to pay credit to Melissa Price, the Minister for the Environment, who's not here today, but also to Malcolm Turnbull. As the member for Wentworth, he championed this cause and he deserves much credit for today's announcement. Over to you, Gabrielle.
Yeah. Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks to Josh and also to Dave Sharma, of course, our candidate for the Wentworth by-election. It's good to have you here. And as State Environment Minister, this is just a fantastic, long-awaited announcement. Centennial Park is the People's Park. That's what it was when Sir Henry Parkes had the vision to set it up all those years ago. It is also the 130th birthday of Centennial Park this year. And so it's absolutely fantastic. This is an amazing birthday present for Centennial Park. It is a People's Park. Yes, there's lots of history to this place, which we're celebrating in the national listing today. But it's a living, breathing place. And as we look around us here today, I'm a local. You see it's used by dog walkers, cyclists. It's a place of serenity. It's a refuge from close by metropolitan city of Sydney. So not only do the locals love it, but of course we have over 14 million visitors here every year. I'm just so thrilled that on this birthday, the 130th birthday of Centennial Park, we can make this significant announcement, which places it along such iconic national assets, such as Bondi Beach, which is also close by. So I wanted to thank the former Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, for his advocacy, to the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, of course, to my colleagues here, particularly Josh Frydenberg, who as former Environment Minister worked with me to be able to make this announcement today.
Okay. Happy to take any questions. Well, Centennial Park now being listed on the National Heritage List will give it an extra layer of protection under the EPBC Act, the Environment Protection, Biodiversity and Conservation Act, and its significance to the nation can't be interrupted. and it will have that extra layer of protection. Dare I say, it may also be easier to attract additional funding for conservation works and other works to ensure that the heritage of this wonderful site is protected for generations to come.
So when you say an extra layer of protection from what? Like development or other...
Development, that's right. That's what the EPBC Act is. It identifies sites of environmental significance and heritage significance. World Heritage listed sites in Australia are protected by the EPBC Act, and sites on the National Heritage List.
The process began a couple of years ago, but is it just coincidence that you're able to announce it during a by-election of the seat where you're fighting to...
Well, this is good news for the people of New South Wales, regardless of which political party they may seek to support. The fact is, it's an extensive process. The Department of Environment is involved, the National Heritage Council is involved, and there is a number of competing priorities and claims to be put on this list because it is so special, because it is such an honour for those sites to be listed. And it is appropriate that Centennial Park, the People's Park, visited by 14 million Australians each and every year, is on that list so that it can be preserved for future generations to come.
It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it, that a beach gets to be nominated ahead of where the actual government of the country will.
Well, these are decisions for the Heritage Council and for the proper processes. And as I said, Gabrielle, Malcolm Turnbull and others have championed this for a number of years, and I think it's been a collective effort at federal, state and local level to ensure this day becomes reality.
And what's the extra funding for, or what is it for funding?
There are heritage grants that are available by the Commonwealth and indeed by the state, and the fact that such a privilege, such an honour, has been placed on Centennial Park with today's listing will no doubt make it a more compelling case when it applies for that funding.
Would it preclude events from occurring here?
No, it won't preclude events from occurring because this is the People's Park. As Gabrielle says, it's visited by lots of people. It has been the scene for special occasions like the bicentenary occasion as well. There was special events that occurred for that as well. So Centennial Park will continue to be used by millions of Australians. It would continue to be the site for important event celebrations, but at the same time we want to maintain its historical significance, we want to acknowledge that historical significance, and we want to ensure that future generations get to enjoy it. Any more questions on Centennial Park? Okay, thank you.
You've asked the ACCC to look into the foreign transaction fees charged by banks. Why move on that now? I mean, this has been an issue that people have complained about for years. What's the reason for
Well, the ACCC came to see me about it, and the ACCC said that this is an issue where they have identified Australians are paying too much. And as we know, millions of Australians travel overseas, buy things on their visas, or transfer their Australian dollars into foreign currency, and the banks are charging them too much. So we want to stop the rip-off. We want to ensure that Australian families get the best possible deal when they're travelling overseas, when they're changing their Australian dollars into foreign currencies. And when you look around the world, people pay less. In the United States, Europe, and the question must be asked, why isn't that the case here in Australia? So the ACCC will get to the bottom of this.
Are you concerned about falling house prices, and also are you concerned whether the Royal Commission will tighten lending standards?
Well, certainly when it comes to implementing the recommendations of the Royal Commission. And I have to say, Commissioner Hayne has done an outstanding job. Anyone who's read the 1,000-page report can see how comprehensive, forensic and professional he has been in putting together the evidence of the misconduct and the inappropriate behaviour in the sector. But when it comes to implementing the recommendations of the Royal Commission, we will of course be very careful to ensure that competition is maintained and that we ensure Australians get access to credit in a way that doesn't harm the economy. And I think we've all got to be conscious of that. Now, when it comes to the housing market, what we've seen is the prices come back to a more sustainable level. This is healthy for the economy. This is what the Reserve Bank had wanted. This is what APRA, as the prudential regulator, had intended. when it tightened investor loans. But what we can't afford is the Labor Party's wrecking ball to the housing market in the form of their new property tax. By getting rid of negative gearing, they will be smashing people's house prices. They will be driving up rents. And they need to now explain to the Australian people why, with housing prices coming back to a more sustainable level, they want to take this destructive policy to the next election, and why they want to see people's value and wealth and equity in their own home fall. That's what their policy is going to do. Let's not forget that 2/3 of the people who have negative geared properties, there are more than 1 million Australians with a negative geared property, 2/3 of them have taxable income under $80,000. This is teachers, nurses, school teachers who are going to be attacked by Chris Bowen and Bill Shorten's new property tax.
Treasurer, extension, obviously, of the Royal Commission. You couldn't ask for one, but are you convinced that having heard only 27 victims out of the 9,000 submissions that have been made, that victims have been given a fair hearing and have had a chance to put this?
Well, Commissioner Haynes made very clear that the 9,000 submissions have all been read, and that he is taking them into account in putting together his final report, just as he has with his interim report. And he's actually called for further public submissions. So people will have the opportunity to put their story to the Royal Commissioner. At the same time, he also has acknowledged that the existence of the Royal Commission does create issues of confidence or challenge confidence in the financial system. So it's his job to get on and execute his roles promptly and effectively, and that is what he's doing. But if the Royal Commissioner needs more time to produce his final report, he will be given it. That's our clear message.
Are you worried that it could look badly on the government to not extend the inquiry when we've seen what's already come out?
Well, Bill Shorten thinks he knows better than the Royal Commissioner. Bill Shorten wants to play politics. The Royal Commissioner wants to deliver results. The government's interests, Scott Morrison's interests, are in ensuring that this behaviour does not happen again. That's our responsibility. Now, we will do everything that is necessary to ensure that we have greater culture of compliance and better conduct in the banking and financial system. Greed has been the motive here. Sales have been pursued at the expense of all else. Fairness, honesty and decency have gone out the door as profits over people have motivated the banks.
Just on GST, Labor says it holds deep concerns about the absence of a guarantee that all states would be better off under draft legislation for Florida and WA. Will the government amend the legislation to add that guarantee?
Well, the states and territories have never had a more generous partner than the coalition government. Not only are we putting in an additional $9 billion, but we've also made changes to the GST around online sales and greater compliance, which will see an additional $6.5 billion come into the coffers of the states. Now, under this reform that the Morrison government is leading, all states and territories will be better off. Let me repeat that. All states and territories will be better off and will have a fairer and more sustainable system. You see, it just wasn't fair that the people of Western Australia were getting 30 cents in the GST dollar. So now we're putting a floor on the GST so that we don't see a repeat of that again. This will benefit all states, not just Western Australia, but we're also putting more...
Treasurer Josh Frydenberg there speaking in Sydney about making Centennial Park a heritage listed site. Stay with us here on Live Now. We'll have more news after the break.